Quilty is brought to you by Baby Lock Sewing and Long Arm Machines. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Aurifil. Aurifil Italian thread, perfectly suited for all your quilting projects. Fairfield. Together, we can make beautiful things. Free Spirit. A new generation of creative and playful fabrics perfect for fashions, home decor, quilting, crafting, and more. Hovels Sewing. Cut it close with Hovels. Moda. Make something quilty with Moda fabrics. Thermoweb. Manufacturer of heat and bond adhesives and new luxe interfacings. Proudly made in the USA. Hello out there. Welcome to Quilty. I'm joined by Heather Kinion today. Welcome, Heather.
Thanks for having me, Mary.
Having you back. You've been on the show before.
I have.
You're becoming a regular. And you are going to benefit from that because Heather is a very accomplished sewist and quilter. And today we're going to talk about the Quilt-As-You-Go method. Heather, I didn't tell you this special thing that I learned because I wanted to get your reaction on camera. Take a guess, how old is the Quilt-As-You-Go method? Like, when did it arrive on the scene?
Like the 80s? The 80s?
Try 1880s.
Really?
For serious. It's a method that was popularized in the 80s, in the 1980s, you're right. Georgia Bonesteel, I believe there was a Quilt-As-You-Go show on PBS, I believe. And I need to fact check that, but I do know from Barbara Brackman that in the 1880s, women would do potholder quilts. So they would do quilts in small chunks as they went along rather than quilting the whole big thing on a frame or whatever. So this method is not as new as you think. Quilt-As-You-Go method is something that it is just what it sounds like. You're quilting pieces of your quilt as you go rather than doing the whole top, then basting it, then quilting it all with the sandwich. So how about that?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Isn't that amazing? 1880s. So how do we do it? I want you to teach me today.
This is a little bit different than the regular Quilt-As-You-Go method because regular Quilt-As-You-Go, you sort of make like potholder size blocks. So each block is a quilt and then you link them together and then you have to like do some magic on the back to cover everything up.
Okay, so there's different ways to do it, as usual in quilting.
This way I had never seen before.
Okay.
And you start with your quilt sandwich, kind of. So I have a quilt sandwich here that matches my little Quilt-As-You-Go.
Okay.
With the backing and the batting. And so you get those all prepared to quilt. And as you can see, actually, there's no quilting on the front of this quilt at all.
And that's the way it stays, right? Like you don't do more quilting later. With this particular method that we're talking about, and look in Quilty magazine, by the way, because there's an article coming up from Amy Ellis about this that is in the magazine too. But with this particular method, the top of your quilt looks like this.
Looks like this. No quilting, just the stitching lines. But the back has all the quilting. So it has all the stitching lines. And it kind of functions like string piecing or foundation piecing, but with the batting already in it.
Okay, so you mean as you're sewing it, as you're quilting it, it feels like you're doing foundation piecing or string piecing.
I just made this mini version of the quilt so that we could fit it on the set. But you would cut... And we have the strips up here, but you would cut the strips from the width of fabric. Okay. So you'd cut it all the way from 42 inches.
Okay. So you're saying this here.
Oh, no. You would do
with the fabric. Okay, got it.
The whole 42 inches.
Yep.
Because it's a baby quilt, and that way, and you cut it way too long.
Okay.
Because the trick with this is keeping your lines straight and things sort of migrate, and you want to be able to trim all the excess off.
Mm-hmm. By the way, this would be a very cute table runner.
So would.
little mat for your desk.
So would. So as you can see, there's like a solid. In this case, we use this like soft patterned fabric. And then you have your brightly colored strips that are the accent pieces.
Okay.
So the first step, you start with your quilt sandwich. So you've got the back and the batting. You don't have a top yet because you're going to make the top in place. Okay. And the first step in this method is to start with your very first piece, which is a piece somewhere in the center of the quilt. Okay. Just like you would regularly quilt your piece from the center, you start the Quilt-As-You-Go from the center. So you put it wrong side to the batting, and then you pick one of your accent colors or fabrics.
I love these fabrics. Beautiful.
And you put them wrong sides together, just like you would paper piecing, foundation piecing, string piecing. And then it's important to pin. And the pinning is a little bit challenging because you have to go all the way through the batting.
And I imagine you want to watch to keep all this from getting knocked to the side. Did you put basting spray?
I did basting spray on this one.
Let me grab a little bit.
I didn't do a great job on that side.
You know, this stuff is great to have It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, we need this in our lives for many reasons. And something like this, a small project like this, a little bit goes a long way. But it's sticking together pretty well.
Right.
I mean, I don't think you did too little.
Right, I would probably, before I got to that far, I would go back and spray some more.
And usually you don't have someone messing with it, like I'm doing right now.
And I actually found that because of the batting and all the layers, I didn't pin a whole lot. I pinned sort of loosely so I can kind of smooth it through.
Where am I starting?
I started just a little bit off, sort of where the batting started.
Great.
But if you wanted to bury your threads, you could start right at the beginning.
Okay. I like starting off a little bit.
Me too.
Now, I've got my walking foot on.
Yep.
And one thing that you need to make sure you do, folks at home, is know where your 1/4 inch is vis-a-vis your walking foot, right? Mine I've got a little notch that shows my 1/4 inch seam.
And mine actually is a 1/4 inch walking foot.
Ah, very nice.
Magic.
Okay, as I'm going, I'm really seeing that you got to watch these layers, man.
Yeah, you kind of you have to really guide it with your fingers, sort
You
of.
really do. So
And keep it smooth through.
As always, taking your time is probably better. Okay, so I'm going along. Finish sewing this one. Now, tell me about pressing, Heather. You're not going to press this.
You can't
right?
really press this, especially not that one because that's a poly batting. So if you pressed it, you would melt your quilt.
Whoa, bad.
Nobody wants. And so you don't press. You're just going to finger press and crease it. And that's all you need to do. And then the pinning once you get further into your pieces or your strips on the quilt, the more you get. So it's here. You just open it up and press it with your finger. If you have like a bone presser or something, that would be really handy for this. And then the next step, you take another one of our base fabric and you put them right sides together again.
And do it again.
Pin. One more time. You go all the way to one side, go back to the center, go all the way to the other side.
Very interesting. And what you end up with by the end, bring this back, is your little guy.
Strip quilt.
Is your little strip quilt. Or if this is not, and this is sort of it could be a finished project, you could finish this, or you could add this to another panel, correct?
Oh yeah, you could.
And make a whole quilt this way.
You could.
And people do that this way, and then when you join your pieces, there's a method for that too that we'll talk about on another episode.
About this one being with the fabric for a baby quilt size is you just trim it and you're at baby quilt size.
Pretty cool. Heather, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Fascinating method. Learn new methods. You might love this method and quilt your quilts this way. See you next time on Quilty. Quilty is brought to you by Baby Lock Sewing and Long Arm Machines. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Aurifil Italian thread, perfectly suited for all your quilting projects. Fairfield, together we can make beautiful things. Free Spirit, a new generation of creative and playful fabrics perfect for fashions, home decor, quilting, crafting, and more. Hovels Sewing, cut it close with Hovels. Moda, make something quilty with Moda fabrics. Thermoweb, manufacturer of heat and bond adhesives and new luxe interfacings, proudly made in the USA.